All right. All right. If you remember last week, Dad started off the message saying something about some of the best messages are the ones you preach to yourself. This is one, too, that is going to speak to myself just because of how the world is kind of going and all. I'm not going to have any verses up on the screen because I'm going to be bouncing back and forth from a lot of places. So you can either trust me, or when I say the verse, you can open up your Bible to it. That's what I'd rather you do, but you can trust me as well on that. But first of all, I went to the hardware store the other day and asked to borrow some rope. And I'd already got it approved by Jimmy. But when I talked to him, they said, well, how much do you need? And I said, well, I need all that you have. And he said, what? I said, 50 foot, is that enough? I said, nope, I need bigger. 100 foot, nope, I need longer. I said, I need a spool of rope. And even that is not enough, because let me show you this little illustration. We're going to have to do some pretending today. So use your imagination. Open up your mind, use your imagination. This rope, we're going to pretend that this rope goes on forever. It goes on forever. However, we know that it just stops right there at the spool. But pretend that it goes on forever and that it is connected to a rope factory. I mean, it's just coming right out of the rope factory that never ends. But this rope signifies a timeline of our life. Okay? A timeline of our life. This little green portion of this rope signifies the time that we have here on earth. Okay? But this rope, even at 250 feet, this rope is long. But this portion is short. The time that we have on earth is very, very short. Now, let's look at it. So about this part right here is birth through school. Whatever it is, if you went to college, it's birth through school. Okay? Now this portion of it, we focus a lot on this portion of it to save up money, to work hard, to do all of that, just so we can enjoy this portion of it. All right? So most of us just only focus on our life here on earth. However, we forget about all this part. All of this part. Goes on forever and ever and ever. We only focus the here and now. And we save up money. We go do things that we want to do, have fun, enjoy it all, just so we can enjoy maybe 10 years of retirement. That's what we call retirement, 10 years of it. And then after that, it's over. That we think, right? It's over on earth. But our timeline is forever. And there's only two possibilities, right? There's only two possibilities for us after death. And we know what those are, right? Say them out loud. Heaven and hell. There's only two possibilities for that. But a lot of times we just focus our lives here on earth and not focus anymore about where we're going. Think about this. When you go on a road trip, you kind of know where you're going, right? You know, let's just say we want to go to San Antonio. All right, we've never been to San Antonio before, and we just want to go there. Well, what is there to do in San Antonio? We look it up. We look at hotels there. We look at the Riverwalk. We look at the Alamo. We look at the Mexican markets. We do all of that. We put in time to go on vacation for a weekend. We even have a little roadmap of how we're going to get there. We're going to go I-30 to 35 and hit south and go down. And we're going to stop in Waco. We're going to see the silos, and before that, we're going to stop in west and get some kolaches, because that's the only place to get those kolaches. Then we're going to stop in Waco. We're going to see the silos, and we're going to continue on down. Maybe stop in Austin. You have a plan. However, a lot of times we don't even think about where we are going, where we're going to spend all of this time. We don't think about that. We only think about, how am I going to spend this time? How am I going to spend this time? And really, in reality, how am I only going to spend that much time? I'm sorry, let me back up. We need to focus not just on the here and now, but we need to focus on the future, ahead of time. So what can we do now so that we can set ourselves up for the future? I've titled my sermon after a famous book called Don't Waste Your Life. And that's what we're going to look at, is not wasting our lives. But what can we do to now that will make an impact for our future? So we're going to look at God's purpose for our life. And here's the first passage, Psalm 139. You can turn to Psalm 139, 13 through 16. We believe, I'm not reading in there yet, but we believe that our lives have a divine purpose created for us by the man, or the God, I can't say the man, the God who created everything else. We were created for a purpose. And in Psalm 139, 13 through 16, it reads this: For it was you who created my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I will praise you because I have been remarkably and wondrously made. Your works are wondrous, and I know this very well. My bones were not hidden from you when I was made in secret. When I was formed in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw me when I was formless. All my days were written in your book and planned before a single one of them began. Every single one of us was planned from the beginning. The very, very beginning. We were planned. We were knit together exactly how God wanted us to be. Before we were ever thought of, He thought of us. And He created us with a purpose. Every one of us here, we are not an accident. You're not a blob. You're not a tadpole that just happened to grow legs, or an ape. You're not a clump of cells. You were knit together in your mother's womb. You were crafted. You were created. We went a couple of weeks ago with the Daytime Wranglers to Idabel, and we had a chance to play with some clay. Is what we were doing. We were supposed to do like this pinch pot thing. I don't know really what it was. We were creating a clay pot. And you kind of think about it. is we just received this lump of clay right in front of us, and we got to design it however we wanted to. Some of us made a pot. Some of us made a basket. We made it however we wanted to. And each one of those pots, if you looked at them, none of them were the same. Every one of them was different. God is the potter. We were the clay. And we were made how He wanted to make us. It doesn't matter if you had a deformity, or you can't talk, or you can't do something. You might not be the brightest crayon in the box. I know I wasn't. But it still ain't. But you were created for a purpose. And this is one of the main reasons we need to be pro-life, is because we were all created for a purpose. If you look in the Scripture and you see the people that God used to do great things, most of the time, actually I can't say most of the time, all the time, He used flawed individuals. Every single time He used flawed individuals. Moses, he couldn't speak very well. David was a runt. You might not have known that, but David was an outcast from his brothers. Rahab was a prostitute. The disciples were poor, and many of them were fishermen. All of the healings that Jesus had done, He did to those that had ailments so that they can be used by God. See, one of the reasons I think that God likes to use run-down, broken people is because we can't get any of the credit for it when He uses us in a big way. He uses our weakness for His strength. You have a purpose. But we just have to be willing to be used by God. If we aren't willing to be used by God for that purpose, we are in danger of wasting our lives. Wasting it for nothing. Now, what does it mean to have a wasted life? A lot of times, a wasted life comes from misplaced priorities. In our modern world, it's easy to be consumed by the pursuit of wealth, success, or temporary pleasures. But these pleasures just drag us down to be empty. And they only satisfy us for a short period of time, and then we can't get enough. We got to have some more of it. That little bit that we got right there, that wasn't enough. We need more. We want to climb that ladder to be at the top. But when you get at the top, let me tell you, there's a hard fall at the bottom. But these pursuits that we have, they just satisfy us for a very short time. The pursuit of money, if we look at that, the pursuit of money, and we all know that we have to live with money. We have to pay our bills. We have to do all that. That's fine. But if we love that and we just want more and more and more of it, it could take us to a point to where we spend all of our time working and we neglect our family. And when we neglect our family, your family is going to despise who you are. This next one, I'm really guilty of this. But our smartphones, they can consume us. to where we are forgetting those that are right in front of us. Have you ever seen Trace Joseph? Have you ever sat at a table across from each other and then texted each other? Have you seen it happen? Liars right there. Liars, liars. All right? Lying right here in church. But we've seen that happen. You go out to eat, and you see a family of 4. Every single one of them are on their smartphones just forgetting each other. When I was at Disney, I saw this constantly. I'm like, you spend $150 per day, per person, to come here, and you're all buried into a YouTube video that you could have watched for free at home. You're just not there. You're not present. And see, I'm guilty of that myself. You name it, whatever it is. Sports, games, work, school, cars, everything is trying to vie for our attention and our money. Now, they're not all bad things. None of them are bad things. But when we elevate those things above where they should be, they become bad. And when we misprioritize things, they lead us to living a wasted life. Now, I've got some statistics that I'm going to share with you, and hang on with me, all right? Just buckle up. It's going to get bad. I learned this when I was doing youth ministry. I read through this stuff, and it really kind of shocked me of what I learned. A parent only has 936 weeks with their kids from birth until hopefully they leave the house at 18. If they don't leave the house at 18, you have a little bit more time. But 936 weeks you have with your kids from the time they were born until the time they are legal adults. That's only 936 weekends that you have with them. It's only 6,552 days until they're an adult. Get this, Texas requires a minimum of 180 days of school per year, or 1,260 hours. For Pewitt, since we're on a 4-day school week, we go to school for 8.5 hours. So in a 24-hour day, if you do 24 hours minus 8.5, that leaves 15.5 hours that the kids are not in school from bell to bell. We know a teenager should be getting 8 hours of sleep per night, but they don't. But they should. So when you subtract that from the 15.5 hours, you're left with 7.5 hours with your kids a day. Now, if they have to ride the bus or commuting to school, most places 30 minutes one way, 30 minutes to the back, that's another hour. So you're left with 6 hours. Where'd that other half hour go? Well, they're waiting before the bell rings to go to their class. So you're left with 6 hours. And this is not including any extracurricular activities, okay? This is just going to school, coming home from school, that's it. 6 hours a day with your kids. So if they play any kind of sports, they have 2 hours of practice after school most of the time. Well, what time do y'all get out? So you're done at only an hour? 7. So that's 3 hours. 4 hours. But, a lot. There's a lot. So let's just average it 2 hours, okay? Because it makes my math better, and I had to have a calculator for this, okay? So we're just going to do that. All right, so it leaves only 4 hours with your kids. Now, if you want good grades, they have to at least spend an hour on homework for that. So how many hours does that leave? 3. 3 hours with your kids a day. So at 4 days, in a 24-hour period, that's 96 hours. It's 4 days worth. And you only get 12 hours with your kid within 4 days. 12 hours. The rest of that time, they're being raised by the school system. And I'm going to keep my mouth shut on that. But I'm not finished. Here's more. Out of those 936 weeks, 260 of those were when they were born until they were the age 5. That leaves 676 weeks that they are in school aged, until they get out. And you only get 42 hours a week with them. And where did I get that? Well, you get 12 hours during the school week. You get 10 hours on Friday if you don't work. And I'm using all this with Pewitt. 10 hours if you don't work on Friday. 10 hours of work 10 hours on Saturday if they don't have any ball games, and 10 hours on Sunday. So in a week you only get 42 hours with your kids. Out of 676 weeks, you get 42 hours of that. So we have to prioritize our time if we don't want to live a wasted life. According to the NCAA, only 1% of athletes receive a full ride scholarship. 1% of all athletes get a full ride scholarship. So parents spend thousands of dollars, thousands of hours away from their families, and hundreds of hours of traveling, chasing a 1% chance at a scholarship for their kids. So that's a 99% chance that your kid is not going to get a scholarship. But we chase that. We could say the same for anything. When we work, and you're working, if you work in the afternoons and your kids are at home, you're missing that time. So your hours with your kids are even less. And I get it. You know, some of us have to work different hours. I get that. But the time that we do have with our kids, we need to be intentional about that. And I'm not saying sports are bad, okay? So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying sports are bad, because they're actually really good for you. They're really good for the kids. They teach character. They teach discipline. They teach teamwork. But when we misprioritize that, it does become bad. So what about you that don't have any kids? Are you scot-free? You think you're scot-free? Watch this video and find out if Michael will do it.
$835 jelly beans. I counted out 500 of them and used those to weigh the rest. In this pile, there's one jelly bean for each day that the average American will live. You might have more beans in your life, or maybe less, but on average, this is the time we have. Here's a single bean. It's your very first day. A special day, but kind of a rough day on everyone involved. Add 364 more and you have the first year of your life. Now, for a sense of scale, here are your first 15 years. 5,475 days, which brings us to the threshold of adulthood, and at that moment, this is the time that we have left. And this is, on average, what we will do with all that time. We will be asleep for a total of 8,477 days. If we're lucky, some of that time we'll be sleeping next to someone we love. We will be in the process of eating, drinking, or preparing food for 1,635 days. We'll be at work, hopefully doing something satisfying, for the equivalent of 3,202 of those days. 1,099 days will be spent commuting or traveling from one place to another, maybe a little bit more if you live in LA. On average, we will watch television in one form or another for a total of 2,676 days. Household activities, like chores and tending to our pets and shopping, will take another 1,576 days. And we will care for the needs and well-being of others, our friends and family, for 564 days. We'll spend 671 days bathing, grooming, and doing all other bathroom-related activities, and another 720 days will go to community activities, like religious and civic duties, charities, and taking classes. After we remove all those beans, this is what remains. This is the time that we have left. Time for laughing, swimming, making art, going on hikes, text messages, reading, checking Facebook, playing softball, maybe even teaching yourself how to play the guitar. So what are you going to do with this time? How much of it do you think you've already used up? If you only had half of it, what would you do differently? What about half of that? How much time have you already spent worrying instead of doing something that you love? What if you just had one more day? What are you going to do today?
So, an average lifespan, you have 28,000 days. And after all that other stuff, we only have 2,000 of those days that we consider free time to do what we want to do. 28,000 days, and you only get 10% of that time to do what you want to do. Don't waste it. Don't waste it. So how do we not waste it? How do we live a purposeful life? Well, first you got to seek God's will. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways know Him, and He will make your paths straight." It teaches us that we need to trust God for His purpose and His plan for our lives. We need to trust Him with everything that we have. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not going to say this. You don't have to be at church every single time the door opens. I'm not saying that. But you need to be spending time in the Word so that you can hear from God, so that you can do what He has called you to do, because each one of us has our own purpose and each one of us are different. We need to have that time with Him, and we need to trust Him with that. We need to use your gifts. God has given each one of us different gifts. And in 1 Peter 4:10 it says, "Just as each one has received a gift, use it to serve others as good stewards of the varied grace of God." Use your gifts. Every one of us has a different gift. Not everyone is called to teach. Not everyone is called to sing. Not everyone is called to work, with your hands. But every one of us have a gift. Every one of us do. Use it. Some of you are great encouragers. Encourage others. Some of you like writing notes. Write notes to others. Some of you like to use your hands and build things. Well, look at that. We're building stuff. Some of you like children. We need help on Wednesday nights with children. Okay? Not only on Wednesday nights, but we need them on Sundays as well. With children. Don't let Tanya steal all my workers. She's been doing that. But every one of us have a certain gift. Use it. Some of you, maybe all you know is how to pour a cup of coffee. We serve coffee on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights. And any time that Casey or Brad are here and they put it on, you can pour coffee. Poor Tony. I get on to him because I hadn't seen him in a long time. I just asked him where he's at. So he has to check in with me now every Sunday. But Tony opens up the door. If you're able-bodied, you can open up a door. You can give somebody a hug. Use your gifts. Because when you're not using your gifts, you're hiding those gifts. And you're not giving your all to God. The next one is to love and serve others. Jesus' life was the perfect example of living a purposeful life. Do you know the only reason Jesus came to earth was to die? That's the only reason he came to earth. Everything else with that was a bonus. He lived a purposeful life. He spent time with his disciples. He also knew that it is important to spend time alone, because he did. He went and spent time alone so he can rejuice and have that. That's Jesus doesn't need to rejuice, but okay, you get me. He spent that time with God, knowing what was to do next. He loved and served others. Matthew 22:39, it says, love your neighbor as yourself. How many of us like to be treated like crap? Does anybody like to be treated like crap? Miss Lynn, you don't. You don't like that. No. So why in the world do we treat others like crap? We love each other's as we want to be treated. Serve them. If you would expect, when you're going somewhere, if you would go into somebody's house, if you would expect them to serve you a drink or food, why don't you have that ready when somebody else comes? Okay, when people just randomly pop up at your house, at least serve them some water. But love and serve others. That's right. Expect nothing back. By serving others with love and compassion, we find purpose and we reflect Christ to the world. We all know how the moon works, right? Or do we have to go through the science lesson? We all know how the moon works. When the moon is lit up in the sky, does it actually emit any light? It reflects the sun. We reflect no light at all. We're like the moon. We reflect no light. However, we don't emit any light because we're bad, sinful beings. But we reflect God's light. And lastly, make the most of your time. Ephesians 5:15 and 16 says, pay careful attention then to how you walk, not as an unwise person, but as wise, making the most of the time because the days are evil. We know that time on earth is short. And for some of us, it may be shorter than others, and eventually it's all going to come to an end anyways. And we don't know when that ending is going to be, but we need to use our time wisely. Building up your family, building up others, serving others, and stop being selfish. Because that's a tragedy. To live purposely, we must wisely manage our time, focusing on what truly matters. And then the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to read it directly from here, because it is a quote from a pastor by the name of John Piper. In 1995, he gave a sermon to over 40,000 students out in the field. If you ever heard of the Passion Conference, this was the very first Passion Conference. And he gave a speech to over 40,000 students. And I wasn't there during this time, but I had watched it on YouTube. And what he said still resonates with me. And so I'd like to read it to you, what he said. And this is his words. 3 weeks ago, we got word at our church that Ruby Eliason and Laura Edwards had both been killed in Cameroon. Ruby was over 80. Single all of her life, she poured it out for one great thing, to make Jesus Christ known among the unreached, the poor and the sick. Laura was a widow, a medical doctor, pushing 80 years old and serving at Ruby's side in Cameroon. The brakes gave way on their vehicle, and over the cliff they go. They're gone. They got killed instantly. And I asked my people, was that a tragedy? 2 lives driven by one great vision, spent in unheralded service to the perishing poor for the glory of Jesus Christ. 2 decades after almost all of their American counterparts have retired to throw away their lives on trifles in Florida or New Mexico. No, this is not a tragedy. That is glory. I'll tell you what a tragedy is. I'll read it to you from the Reader's Digest. Bob and Penny took an early retirement from their jobs in the Northeast 5 years ago when he was 59 and she was 51. Now they live in Punta Gorda, Florida, where they cruise on their 30-foot trawler, playing softball and collecting seashells. That is a tragedy. And people today are spending billions of dollars to persuade you to embrace that tragic dream. And I get 40 minutes to plead with you, do not buy it. With all my heart, I plead with you, do not buy that dream. The American dream, a nice house, a nice car, a nice job, a nice family, a nice retirement. Collecting seashells as the last chapter before you stand before the Creator of the universe to give an account of what you did. Here it is, Lord, my shell collection. And I've got a nice swing, and look at my boat. That is a tragedy. Don't waste your life. Don't waste it. All of us have time. That is one thing we cannot get back, but it is unlimited for us until it's not. How you choose to deal with your time is up to you. You can either use it for God's glory, or you can squander it on yourself. Because this short little time we're here on earth is the only chance that we get. It's the only chance that we get. all of this time is what we account for what we did right here. If you waste your time, what do you think is going to happen? If you look for glory, the glory of Christ, what do you think is going to happen? You get one life. Don't waste it. Let's pray. God, I ask that today, Lord, that we be more tuned to how we spend our time, how we spend our money, how we deal with others. Lord, I just ask that we don't waste our lives on things that will only give us a short pleasure, but that we will do things that are honoring and glorifying to you, helping others, so that when we get to heaven and we stand before you and have to give an account for our life, we can say, here, Lord, all this I did for you. Not here, Lord. I gathered up all of this possessions and we've done all of this stuff for myself. Lord, as we go, just help us be able to manage our time for you, and that we will just know what our purpose is for others. We thank you for every breath that you've given to us, because it is a gift from you. Every breath that we take, it is a gift. And we thank you for that. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, everybody. Have a good week, and don't waste it.